name is Tabang Segolela. I'm a manager in the CPD and registration unit in the Office of the South African Pharmacy Council. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome interns and tutors who managed to join us for this session. I hope you're going to get all the information you need in order to get started with the submission of your CPD entries. From the office, I'm having colleagues from the communications and media who will be assisting us just to make sure that we are connected. You can hear each other throughout the workshop, and they will also assist in moderating the questions that you are submitting, so that at the end of the day, we will be able to respond to all your queries. And then I'm also having representatives of assessors and moderators of Intern CPD. They will introduce themselves when it's their time to present, but they will be taking you through the CPD, how, what is a CPD, what information is needed and all that. And then I'm also having some of the colleagues from the office, from the Office of CPD and from the Office of Pre-Reg and CPD and registration. So I'm welcoming you, colleagues. Just to save time, I won't acknowledge you individually. And then let me start by saying to interns and tutors, I hope you have read the information that is displayed there. That is how our workshop is going to be conducted. And without any further waste of time, we will move on to our presentation. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Let's go to the first slide, please. All right, so as part of our introduction, we just want to congratulate our interns for 2023, and we're saying you are welcomed. And we just want to warn you as we start in the year to say this is a year wherein we're expecting you to gain all the knowledge that you need, all the skills that you need in order to complement what you have gathered from the university. The good thing is that this year you are working under direct supervision of a pharmacist. So that is the support that you will only get when you are doing an internship. So please make sure that you make full use of that opportunity and you will never regret it. With those few words, we're welcoming you into the profession. And yeah, that's that from the Office of Council. Next slide, please. Okay, this is our program for the day. The workshop is going to take us 3 hours. We started at 18 hours and we will finish at 21 hours. So I've already done the welcome, and the introduction to pre-registration is going to be done by myself up to 6:45. And then there will be pre-evaluation CPD portfolio, wherein our assessors and moderators will take you through. And then we will have a short break between 7:30 and 8:20. From there, we will continue with our assessors and moderators. Then up to 10 minutes to 9. From there, we will attend to question. It will be question and answer session, which will be led by the communications and media colleagues. From there, we will close at 9:00 p.m. Thank you. Okay, this is the outline of my presentation. We will be looking at the legal framework, pre-registration evaluation, Then we will also navigate the SAPC website, wherein we will focus more on the interns page. From there, we will look at some of the reasons which can contribute to the delay in the release from internship. And then we will also look at the CPD reassessment, appeal, and consultation procedures. And then we will also look at what we consider as unprofessional conduct. And I will also share with you the 2022 CPD competency statistics. And then from there, we will look a little bit on how to apply for community service. And lastly, we will share with you how to contact the Office of Counsel in case you are having some queries. Thank you. So with the legal framework, we just want to draw your attention to the Pharmacy Act 53 of 1974 as amended. I believe you all know this act. So in the act, it is indicated that interns, they are required to meet specific requirements before they can be registered as such with counsel. And the first requirement is that you must have been attached to an approved premises, meaning the pharmacy that you want to practice internship at should have been approved by counsel to train interns. And secondly, you must provide the office with an approved contract that you would have signed with your tutor. And then the other thing, you must also pay the applicable fee. And the last thing that is not indicated there is that you should have completed your BPharm degree. So once you have met all those requirements, the office will be able to register you as an intern. And then please remember that internship is a period of 12 months. So any interruption in between might result with your internship being delayed. So please take note of that and try to avoid it as much as you can. And then next slides, please. Okay, it is also important for interns to note that their scope of practice is exactly the same as that of a pharmacist. The only difference is that they are operating under supervision of a pharmacist, meaning there's nothing that an intern can finalize without consulting the pharmacist or without an approval from the pharmacist. And interns who are in manufacturing or academia are required to complete 400 hours of supervised practice in an approved community or hospital, institution, pharmacy. So interns who are in manufacturing and academia, please take note that when you go for the 400 hours, your tutor will remain your tutor. That your tutor is still responsible for your internship even when you are away for the 400 hours. Therefore, make sure that you make proper arrangements on time when you are arranging for the 400 hours, and your tutor should be made aware of all the arrangements. And then please make sure that you do the 400 hours at least on intervals of 5 consecutive days, meaning don't go there once a week or something like that, because that won't be effective. From the office, we're recommending you to be there at least 5 consecutive days. And then please make sure that you keep all the records, since you might need them as part of your evidence while you're completing your CPDs. And make sure that your supervising pharmacist submit the progress report online. So there are progress reports that your supervising pharmacists are expected to submit online. Please make sure that they do so while you are still with them in the facility. Thank you. And then there is what we call cessation of contract. So here we just indicating that it does happen that sometimes an internship contract may be terminated between an intern and a tutor. So here are the recommendations from the office. The first one is that the intern must make sure that they find a tutor who will assist them after they have terminated with the initial tutor. So it is the responsibility of the intern to do so. Or even if they are changing the facility, it is also the responsibility of the intern to inform the office. So what is needed from the intern is that they must submit an online application wherein there is a form that must be completed. It's called cessation of contract. Secondly, the intern must enter into contract with the new approved tutor, and it is the responsibility of the intern to make sure that the new facility is approved to train, and there is also a fee that the intern is expected to pay. So all this should be done at least 7 days prior to the session date to cancel in order to avoid delays. So we really advising interns to make sure that they submit everything on time, because if one of the requirement is not met or any of the document is not submitted, that will result with the process being delayed. Thank you. Right, now we're going to look at the pre-registration evaluation. So interns should remember that during this year of internship, they are going to be evaluated on 4 areas. The first one is the pre-registration examination, CPD portfolio, progress reports, and the number of training days. So all these requirements need to be met for the interns to be progress to community service. And then now let's look on what is it that is required of you to meet all these requirements. With the pre-registration examination, please note that this is an online open book examination, and more information on this pre-registration examination will be provided to you during the workshops that are still coming. So it is just important for interns to note that they will be expected to sit for an open book online examination, and you will be given more information during the workshops that I'm saying they are coming. And then with regard to the CPD portfolio, here, interns should note that there is a competency standard 5.3 under domain 5. So please note that that is a compulsory competency standard, which means that all interns are required to complete competency standard 5.3 under domain 5, nothing else. And then the CPDs that are submitted by interns, they will be taken for assessment and for moderation. And once that is done and the office has confirmed the quality of the assessment and the moderation, results will be released as per the schedule that has been published in your manuals. So please make sure that you familiarize yourselves with the schedule. And then the submission dates are also provided there when you check on the schedule. So please make sure that you also make sense of what does that mean. We will look at the schedule as we continue. But at the end of the day, interns are expected to be successful in 6 CPD entries in order for them to meet the CPD requirements. Otherwise, they won't be released for community service. And then there are also the progress reports that you are expected to, or your tutors are expected to submit. Please familiarize yourself with those progress reports. They are provided in your manuals, and please make sure that you remind your tutors to submit on time. What I want to mention for now is that interns who are in institutional or community pharmacies are expected to submit 7 progress reports, and those in the manufacturing are expected to submit 9 progress reports, and as well as the declaration of 400 hours. And then those who are in academia are expected to submit 3 progress reports and a declaration of 400 hours and an achievement of master's qualification. And then proof of competency is when all the favorable reports are submitted by your tutors. Let's move on, Natalie. Okay, so here we're going to look at the CPD submission deadlines. And these deadlines are there in your manuals. Please make sure that you familiarize yourself with the dates that are provided there. I want to take you through on what each of this column means so that we don't receive a high number of queries from the office. So the first column, it says last date for submission of CPD entries. So interns here should take note that CPD entries can be submitted on any day at any time, but these deadlines, they're just telling you that, entries submitted by that deadline. For example, let's use the one of the 3rd of March. Interns who manage to submit CPD entries maybe after the 27th of January and by the 3rd of March will receive their CPD results on the 29th of March. And then anybody who submitted after the 3rd of March, they won't receive their results on the 29th of March, but they will only receive their results on the 27th of April, since they have submitted after the 3rd of March deadline. So please understand those deadlines. Anything submitted after the given deadline, it means the results will follow into the next submission deadline. And then on the last column, so the first one shows the submission dates, the second column shows the date on which the results will be released, and then the last column is just for you to note that according to council policy, appeals must be submitted within 1 calendar month after the release of the results. So interns who want to appeal their results should do so within 1 calendar month after the date on which they received the results. And it's also important to note that entries must be submitted by 12 o'clock p.m. on the last date of submission. An entry submitted after 12 p.m. on the last date of submission will be assessed in the next submission cycle. So this is a new what can I call, regulation, sort of a new rule that we have added this year, because sometimes interns face some challenges while they are submitting their CPD entries. So to avoid them being frustrated when submitting while after hours when the office is closed, we introduce this clause to say that make sure that you submit on time. In case you're experiencing some challenges, at least the office will still be open and we will be able to assist you. But anything after that time, unfortunately, we won't be in a position to assist you, especially submissions at night. that one, it will be out of our control. And it is also important for interns to note that you are required to submit the 6 CPD entries within the first 6 months of registration. So if you can adhere to that, then you will be in a better position to sit for the pre-registration examination, and you will also be in a better position to can do some corrections in case you are not successful with your CPDs. Sorry. And then when we look on the last CPD submission date for 2023, that is the 1st December 2023. And the last release date for the year will be the 17th December 2023. So please note that anything submitted after the 1st of December 2023 will fall under the deadline of the 5th January 2024. And as a result, the result of that particular CPD will be released on the 22nd of January 2024. And then it is also important for interns to note that all the CPDs that they will be submitting, the 6 CPDs, they will be for free, and interns are also allowed 3 more CPDs to submit for free, meaning all in all, interns can submit 9 CPDs for free. And from the 10th CPDs, interns will be charged a fee of 290. So please take note of that. Don't be surprised when the office is sending you an invoice of CPDs for resubmission. It will be because you would have exceeded the maximum of 9 CPDs that you are allowed to submit for free. Thank you. Okay, interns are also notified that we will be conducting the CPD feedback workshops on the 7th of June 2023 and on the 29th of August 2023. And both the workshops will be conducted in the evening. So the purpose of this workshop is to allow interns a platform wherein the office together with the assessors and moderators will be there to respond to their queries, and the assessors will also be able to share with them the CPD assessment experiences and to guide them on how to improve the quality of their CPD entries. So it's important for you to attend this session, especially if you are struggling with your CPDs. And then here I'm just going to share with you the exam dates so that you are in the know, but more information will be shared with you during the pre-registration exam workshops. So there are 2 types of exams that you are expected to take note of. There is what we call the practice examination, and there is also what we call the pre-registration examination. So what is happening with the practice examination? This is an examination that you are expected or you are required to sit for, because this is where you will have an opportunity to navigate the exam platform. And the first workshop for the year has already been conducted on the 24th of January. So there is another one that will be conducted on the 1st of June 2022, and the last one will be on the 17th of August. And then once you manage to sit for the practice examination, you will be able to sit for the pre-registration examination, meaning the practice exam is a requirement for you to be able to sit for the pre-registration examination. Otherwise, you won't be allowed to sit for the pre-reg exams. And then the exams will be on the first, the first one has already passed in March. So there will be the next one in August and then in October. So please note that these dates are subject to change, and whenever there are changes, you will be notified, but also please make sure that you visit the website regularly. And then the full exam requirements are provided in your manual, so please make sure that you also familiarize yourself with those requirements. And the other thing that I want to mention with regards to the examination is that all exam bookings must be done online before the closing date, and late booking fee will be charged after the closing date until 14 days before the exams. So make sure that you book on time to avoid the late booking penalties. Thank you. Okay, the exam entrance requirements. So there are CPD requirements that you are expected to meet in order for you to be allowed to sit for the pre-registration examination. And these requirements, they differ depending on how long have you been registered as an intern. So interns who have been registered and they are in their 6th month of internship are expected to have submitted all 6 CPD entries, and they should be successful in at least 3 of the CPD entries, and they should have completed the practice exams and submitted the required progress reports. So once those requirements are met, then they will be able to sit for the pre-reg exams. Interns in their 9th month, they are expected to have submitted 6 CPD entries, and they should be successful in all the 6 CPD entries. Then the other requirements, they are the same as above. And then interns who are reattempting the pre-reg exam, they are also expected to have been successful in the 6 CPD entries, and then the tutor should have also submitted the required number of progress report. And then please note that there is no exam fee for the first and the second attempts, and then a fee will be charged on the third and the subsequent attempt. And the fee, I hope, is published on the SAPC website. And it is also important for interns to note that their tutors will have access to their results. So don't be surprised. Please take note of that. Thank you. All right, thank you. So now we are going to navigate the SAPC website. I will be taking you through on how to access the intern page. So what is important for you is to know the website, the address up there. So you must know that there is a www.sapc.za.org. I hope by now you know it. And then that will take you to a page wherein you will indicate that you are a registered person, meaning the first landing page anybody can access, whether you are registered with council or not. So when you are on that page, I didn't provide for it here, but please make sure that you choose registered person because you are registered with council. Once you have selected the registered person, you will indicate that you are an intern. So you will choose pharmacist intern. Once you have chosen that, it will take you to this page that I'm displaying. And then here, you will be able to access the manual. You will be able to access the information on CPDs. You'll be able to access the application forms. So everything that is provided in that menu, you will be able to access the scope of practice of an intern. All that information you will be able to access. And then where I've indicated the arrows there in blue, it's saying that 2023 Intern and Tutor manual. If you want to download the manual, you will click there. And then we're also having Intern CPD user manual, which you will access by clicking there, where there is also an arrow towards the bottom. And then there are other important documents that can help you as you're doing your intern in terms of your CPD and the exams. So you must also click under other important documents. You will have access to some of the documents that might assist you. And then when you want to log into the secure site, meaning the site wherein you are expected to put in your username, your password, you're going to click where it says log in. So once you click on log in, it will take you to the secured site, and you will be expected to log in using your username and your password. Next slide, Natalie. Okay, once you are on your secured site, you will be able to see this page, which is giving you a more or less a summary of your finance status. This is where you can access your letters and certificate, and you can be able to see the workshops. I hope this is where you are also able to book. And then your progress reports are also there. The contacts for counsel are also there. So you can be able to access all those things on this page. And then again, you will be able to access the CPD from this page. So when you click on on the menu on your left, there is after dashboard, there is CPD. If you want to go to the CPD page, that's where you will click. And then the others are manuals, my progress reports. So if you want that, you will also click on the right item, and then log out is also provided there. Next slide, Natalie. So once you click on CPD from the previous page, it will take you to this window where it says annual declaration. So once you click CPD page, it will take you in fact to this page wherein you will see a menu saying annual declaration, and then it shows the 4 steps of CPD, and then my submissions and log out. But before you can be able to do anything on this page, you will be expected to do annual declaration. So with the annual declaration, you just declaring that you are an intern who's practicing, and giving all the information that you will be required of. So once that is done, okay, let's move on, Natalie. Yes, so once you click on annual declaration, you will see this page, and can you see under complete it's saying no? So this simply says you haven't completed your annual declaration. And then for you, it is for year 2023. You won't see any other year other than that. So you just click on update, and then you will be able to do your annual declaration. Next slide, Natalie. Okay, so as part of your annual declaration, you will be asked questions about your employment, and then the domain competencies and the assessment criteria. So those are the things that you will be responding to while you're doing your annual declaration. And then when you're done, you just click on the continue that is indicated in green at the bottom, and that will take you to the next page. And then once you have responded to all the questions, it will say, according to your competencies, you are a practicing pharmacist. So as an intern, we're expecting you to be practicing, because if you can declare yourself as non-practicing, then it means you won't be able to you won't be able to come to what can I say? It means you are not practicing, therefore we won't recognize your internship. So make sure that the practicing status is there, is practicing. Once you done your declaration, and then if you are happy, you go in to select the agree. If you feel it's saying non-practicing, just select disagree and go back and check what is it that you didn't do right. In most cases, it will say non-practicing if you have selected I do not do this for all the questions, but which is impossible. If you are an intern, you should be doing one or two of those things. So just make sure that when you going through the competencies, there are those that will be relevant to your sector, and then those are the ones that you will select as those that you are doing, and then you will be able to be declared correctly. Next slide, please. Okay, so once you are done with the annual declaration, there is the 4 steps of CPD. I hope you have seen them before as students. So they are exactly the same. There is the reflection on practice, planning, implementation, and evaluation or reflection on learning. So once you are declared as practicing, there is the on the dashboard there will be CPD, the one that is shaded in black there behind. So that's where you will click. When you click there, it will give you all the 4 steps of CPD. And then when you click on step 1, it will tell you exactly what reflection is all about. When you click on step 2, it will tell you exactly what planning is all about, just like that. So make sure that you go through all the steps and you understand them well before you start with your CPDs. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, so there are 6 domains of we're having 6 domains from which you will be expected to choose a competency. So each domain has a particular number of competencies. So when you're doing your CPD, you're gonna choose the domain, and you are expected to choose one competency standard from all of these 6 domains, except for domain 5, wherein I said 5.3 is compulsory. So when we are on the same page of CPD dashboard, after you are done with your declaration, when you will be able to access these domains, and then when you click on public health, it will give you more information on what public health as a domain is all about. It will even show you all the competencies that are within public health, and then the behaviors within that domain. So make sure that you also familiarize yourself with all this so that you'll be able to choose the appropriate competency standards to submit for assessment. Thank you. Okay, so this is the first step of a CPD cycle. Like I said, more information, you will get it on the website. But when you're doing the reflection, you are just identifying a new learning need. The assessors will also take you through all these steps as part of their presentation. Thank you. So here I want to show you the CPD submission, to say once you are done with the 4 steps of CPD, you will be expected to submit your CPD. So when you do your submission, the first step, your CPD will go to your tutor for verification. And if your tutor is happy, he will submit the CPD to the office for assessment. But if the tutor is not happy, he can return the CPD to you. so that you can make some necessary amendments and so that the entry can be submitted, with the tutor happy knowing that you will make it. And then when you click on my submission from the menu on your left, you will receive an update on the CPDs that you have submitted. If there are those that you are already successful on, it will show as such. But here you will only see what you have submitted. If you have submitted one CPD, there will be only one CPD showing. So if you have submitted it for tutor verification, it will show submitted for tutor verification. If your tutor has submitted it for assessment, it will show submitted for assessment. And then if the result of the CPD has been released and you are successful, it will show submitted for compliance. And when you click on that CPD so that you can view your results, the status will remain submitted for compliance. But if after clicking on that CPD to view your results and the status changed to awaiting submission, it means you were not successful on that CPD. Therefore, you are expected to go through the assessor's comments and then do a resubmission for assessment. So please make sure that you understand those terms. They are explained in your manual. Make sure that you understand them thoroughly so that you don't miss anything. Next slide, please. Okay, and then here, I think I've already, okay, this is what you will see when the results are released. So remember I said the results will be indicating as submitted for compliance, whether you have passed or not. But if you are not successful, once you have clicked on that submitted for compliance, the status will immediately change to awaiting submission. But if you are successful, it will remain submitted for compliance. And then in case you are not successful, it will indicate where it's written in red, not yet successful. And then if you are successful, it will show successful there at the bottom. So successful candidates can view the assessor report by clicking on where it's written report. And then other things they don't have because they are not applicable for them. And then interns who are not successful will be able to access the 4 steps of CPD cycle so that they can make necessary changes. So when you click on reflection, you will be able to access the reflection site. And if there's anything to correct there, you will be able to correct. And then when you are done, it will take you to the next step, which is planning, just like that. And then once you are done, you can submit for verification. You can see the next one after reflection. And then when the results are released, please make sure that the first thing you do is to view your report, because this is where you will get information on why you didn't make it, why are you not successful, what are the things that you need to do and in order for your entry to be successful. So please make sure that you go through those comments from the assessor, and please make sure that you download that report, because sometimes after you have opened it, once you start working on you start doing your corrections, you will lose some of the information. So please make sure that you save it for reference. And then the delete button, let's not talk about it, because this is only when you have made an error. But an entry that has already been assessed, you won't be in a position to delete it. Next slide, please. Okay, and then this is the dashboard, wherein you will be able to see the CPDs, the number of CPDs that you are compliant with, and then those that you are, I'm sorry, this will give you as the status of your CPDs. Yeah, let me put it like that. If the like for the blue color is indicating CPDs that are still with your moderator, so the results are not yet released, and in that case there are 5 CPDs, and then the gray one is just indicating the one CPD that you are already successful on. So it means the blue ones you are still waiting for the results to be released. And then entry by outcome. So this is just communicating the same message as the first one. It's just that here it will tell you you are successful in one, and then the others, they are not available because results are not yet released. Next slide, please. And then here are some of the things that will delay your release from internship. The first one is CPD entries that are submitted after the 1st of December. They won't be marked during the year or during this year of 2023, and this can result in your release being delayed. If you are not successful in 6 CPD by the end of the year, obviously you won't be released. And then if you didn't make it for the pre-registration exam, or your progress reports are incomplete, or you haven't completed the 365 days. So make sure that all those requirements are met. Next slide, please. So make sure that you submit your CPDs on time in order to avoid disappointments. So sometimes interns, they will start sending queries because they didn't do their part on time, wherein interns will send queries such as, can my CPD be marked as my ComServe placement wants evidence that they have been completed? Unfortunately, from the office, we are also structured. We are having our own deadlines. We don't do things at your own time. So to avoid such disappointment, please stick to the deadlines that we have given you, and we will also do our part. Thank you. Next slide, please. And then here we're just saying, interns, we believe you are now professionals, and we are appealing to you that you must take responsibility of your work. We had instances where parents are calling on behalf of their interns, and this is worrying the office to say, what kind of professionals are we producing? So please make sure that you start taking responsibility now. It's always good to do things for yourself. And remember, from council, we know you, we don't know your parents. They are not registered with us. And unfortunately, we won't be able to give them any information. So please spare your parents and do your part. Thank you. Okay, from the office, interns are allowed to do reassessment. They are allowed to submit an appeal, and they are also allowed to request for a consultation with the assessor. So all these procedures are outlined in your manual. Please make sure that you familiarize yourself with those procedures, and they do have timelines. You are also requested to look at those timelines. I think I've already spoken about the appeals procedure earlier on. And then for reassessment, if you are not happy with um, the results of your CPD, you can ask for reassessment by a different, assessor or moderator that is allowed, but there is a fee that goes with it. And then if you feel you don't understand the assessor's comments, you are expected to consult with your tutor, and the assessors are only allowed to communicate with interns who have attempted the same CPD more than twice and they have been found unsuccessful. meaning with the first or the second attempt, unfortunately, you won't be allowed to consult with the assessor. Thank you. And then there is what we consider as unprofessional conduct. Some of the actions that will be considered as unprofessional conduct are listed there. Pressurizing an assessor or moderator to mark your CPD entries, or threatening the assessors, or also copying from the previous intern CPDs or from your fellow interns. Those are some of the acts that or the behaviors that the office does not accept, and for that you will be taken for disciplinary actions. So please make sure that you refrain from such behaviors. Okay, this is the results of the the statistics of 2022 Intern CPD competency. This report was prepared on the 16th of February 2023. And then here we just want to share with you how the 2022 interns were progressing in terms of CPDs. So there were 1,349 interns in our register who registered in 2022 as of the 16th of February this year. And of all those interns, 1,053, that is 78%, were successful. And then we had 298 interns, that is 22%, who were not yet successful. So we just requesting interns to take CPD seriously, so that you avoid such disappointments at the end of the year, since this can delay you from being registered for community service. So make sure that you do everything on time, and so that you will be within those who manage to succeed during the 12 months of internship. Next slide, please. And then it is important for you also to note that there is an annual fee for interns, which is payable by the 1st of June each year. And the fee is 653. Please make sure that if you haven't paid it, you pay it, so that we don't have to remove you from the register. And then I think the other information I've already touched on. Next slide, please. Okay, applying for community service. Interns should note that the community service application is coordinated by the Department of Health via the ICSP online program. Therefore, from the office, we are not playing a major role, except that we provide them with information regarding your progress in terms of the exams and the CPDs. That's why we're saying if you are not yet successful, there's no way that you will be placed. Next slide, please. And then this is where you can contact the Office of Counsel whenever you want to submit queries, and the office will respond to your queries within 72 hours. So please be patient with the office. There are many queries that are coming through, and allow us 72 hours. You can only make follow-ups after 72 hours. Next slide, please. And then that is the customer care contact details, and the office is only open from 8 to 4:30 every day. And those are the hours that you can contact us. We are closed over the weekends and public holidays. Okay, I think this will bring us to the end of this session. Maybe we will attend to the questions at the end of the workshop when it's time for questions and answers. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tabang. Natalie, can you just confirm that you can hear me and can see my screen, please?
Yes, we can, Adele.
Thank you very much. Good evening, colleagues, and welcome to the third and last workshop for the year. I am Adele Nudia, and I'm a CPD assessor, and with me tonight is Dr. Rianda Joubert, who is a CPD moderator, and we are going to explain the requirements for CPDs for you this evening. And with the statistics that Tabang has shared, maybe we can take that 78% up to 100. And I want to assure you that if you look at all the resources available from Pharmacy Council and that you take everything that we say this evening to heart, it is possible to be successful in all 6 your CPDs on your first go. So this presentation is the collective wisdom of all the CPD assessors, moderators, and Pharmacy Council to ensure that you are successful on your first go and that you can do your CPDs successfully and write your exam. So what are we going to have a look at this evening? Just want to... Sorry, just want to move on. Sorry, is the slide moving? It seems like it.
Yes.
Okay, so what we're going to look at this evening is we're going to look at the competency standards. And first of all, we're going to look at some terminology and how to select a domain, how to select a competency standard. Then I'm going to have a look at the CPD cycle. We're going to talk a little bit about evidence. We're going to have a look at the example. We're going to talk about assessment and your feedback, reassessment, and then professionalism, confidentiality, some challenging CPDs. We're going to advise you on some CPDs that you should not attempt or which are advisable for you. And the last thing we're going to have a look at is the role of your tutor. It's very important that you have a look at the resources. I sometimes speak to interns and then they really look at the intern manuals and they rarely look at the checklists. But it's extremely important that you use these checklists and these criteria that we've provided and Council has provided in the manual with each CPD that you select or that you submit. You can see the criteria for assessment. You can find on pages 34 to 35. There's a checklist, and then all the competency standards are also provided in the manual. We are going to have a look at various bits of the manual, and then you will see how important it is for you to use each of these for every CPD and every step within the CPD cycle to be successful. Other resource that you should not forget about is your tutor. Remember, your tutor has a lot of experience and they will be able to guide you, and the Pharmacy Council website. So first of all, some terminology. It's very important for you to understand the terminology in order to complete your CPD successfully and sometimes to interpret the feedback that you receive. First of all, Tabang said that you have to submit a CPD from each domain. So you remember there are 6 domains and you can submit it in any order as at least one from each domain. So if you want to submit 2.6 and then 1.1 and then 5.3, you are welcome as long as you submit one from each domain. The next one is the competency standard. So when we look at the grid, you'll see under a domain, we find different competency standards. And within each competency standard, we find the behavioral statements. So your assessor will talk a lot about behavioral statements, and you should address all the behavioral statements. And I will show you where to find those. And the behavioral statements are the things that you need to show us that you are able to do, but I will show you. If you look at the competency framework, you can see we selected domain 2, the safe and rational use of medicine and medical devices, and underneath that you will see it's a hierarchy where we have competency standard 2.1, we have 2.2, then 2.3 to 2.8. And underneath, within the competency standard, if you look at 2.1, you will see there's behavioral statements A, B, C, up to H. And example for 2.2, the behavioral statements goes from A to I. So when we look at an example, you will understand what we mean when we say you have to achieve the behavioral statements. So this is just what the competency framework looks like, and you can find this in your manual as well. So Tabang has mentioned the 6 domains. I'm sure you have had a look at them: public health, safe and rational medicine use, supply of medicine, organizational and management skills, professional and personal practice, and education. So remember, you have to select one of each. So one competency standard within domain 1, one in 2, one in 3, and you can submit them in any order. So you can see domains are organized clusters of competencies. And these competencies were developed for the South African setting, which you are working in. So, okay, we've talked about the competency standards and the bigger domains, and now you have to take note of how it is structured. So, the part of the domain, how does the domain apply to you? An introduction to the domain, competencies, behavioral statements, entry level, intermediate, and advanced, and then there is a tick box. But I'm sure all of you have looked at your intern manual, so you have seen this. So entry level, that's for our interns. It's for the first 3 years of practice. Intermediate is 3 to 7, and advanced is more than 7. That is later on. So just the example, this is what you will see in your intern manual. You can see this is part of domain 2, and the one we've selected to show you is 2.6, pharmacist-initiated therapy. And then if you look at the behavioral statements, that is the A, B, C, and D. So you have to show your assessor and your moderator that you can assess and treat a patient based on objective and subjective signs and symptoms as guided by relevant legislation and within your scope of practice. So that's just one of them, and you have to achieve at least 75% of the behavioral statements in this case. So you can see how important it is to analyze the behavioral statements before you start your CPD. So there you can see, there's the framework. So first of all, we have number 2. Does this domain apply to me? Then it says, this domain applies to all pharmacists who play a role in ensuring safe and rational medicine use. So yes, we can say this applies to me. Then you can read through. It's very important to read through the introduction. It gives a lot of information that's very valuable to you in tackling your CPD and to make sure that you've selected the correct CPD. So you can see there 2.1 to 2.8 is our competency standards, and we've selected 2.6, and these are our behavioral statements. So you can see it's very important to understand you have to select one domain, one competency standard under the domain to achieve at least 75 or all of the behavioral statements, depending on the number of behavioral statements, but we will get to that. So let's just go back to the beginning. What is CPD? What is continuing professional development? You've all seen the definition. You know what the definition is. And it's a process by which registered persons, it's you and me, maintain and enhance their competence throughout their learning careers. It encompasses a range of activities, including continuing education, supplementary training, anything that you can think of that improves your knowledge. CPD enables registered persons to develop in their area of practice and demonstrate competence. So you can see it's very important in our profession that we need to stay up to date and do continuing professional development. So as Tabang mentioned, and I hope all of you have seen this, a CPD consists of 4 parts, or there are 4 steps within the cycle. And we start with reflection, planning, implementation, and evaluation. So we have the 4 steps, and we will be looking at each of these steps individually. So the first one we're going to have a look at is our reflection. So this is where we start. So something happened in the pharmacy, and we determined that we need to learn something. So first of all, we're going to decide on an appropriate learning title for our activity that is linked to what we want to learn. And it's very important. I just want to stress to you as interns, I assessed a CPD today, and it's a new intern. And the learning title was exactly the same as the competency standard. And if that intern used the checklist provided, they would have been successful. But they just copied the wording of the competency standard for their learning title. And the checklist is very clear. We're going to look at it now. So first of all, your learning title, it should be relevant to what you want to learn. Please don't simply copy the wording of the competency standard. If you copy it, it's going to be not yet successful. The learning title must be unique and describe your case study. So first of all, reflection, ask yourself, what do I need to learn? It's your own learning need. How do I know that that is what I need to learn? And what will I do with what I have learned? So you need to formulate a reflection, and it's very important to make it personal. Tell us, a patient entered the pharmacy and requested something for allergy or something for cough. The patient has hypertension, and I didn't know how to assist the patient. So it's very important that you set the scene for the assessor or the moderator to understand what happened in the pharmacy and tell us what you didn't know. What do you want to do? What do you want to learn? Be careful not to describe the learning need of the patient. So don't say the patient didn't know which cough medicine to use. You didn't know which cough medicine to suggest to a hypertensive patient. It's very important the learning need must be related to the selected outcome. For example, if you select pharmacist-initiated therapy, don't talk about evaluation of a prescription because no prescription is involved in pharmacist-initiated therapy because you as the pharmacist will initiate the therapy. So make sure that it is aligned with the selected competency standard. So when you ask yourself, what do you want to learn? This will determine the choice of the competency standard and the behavioral statements that you want to address. So as I said, if the intern that I assessed looked at the criteria that is in the manual, then the learning title would have been successful. There you can see a direct copy of the behavioral statement or similar to the behavioral statement or competency or no title is a 0. Original, descriptive, and related to the scenario or case is a 1. So then the intern's learning title would have been successful if they just made use of the checklist to check their submission and make sure that they adhere to the guidelines. Because this is the same guidelines that we as assessors and moderators use to assess your submission. If we look at the learning need, irrelevant learning need or not linked to the behavioral statements, it's a 0. General description, it's a 1. But if we look at the 3, a clear learning need, what happened in the pharmacy to trigger this, an indication of what the intern hopes to achieve, then it's a 3. So you can see, if you set the scene, tell us what happened, what you want to learn, what you want to achieve, then the learning need will be successful. So it's very important to make use of the checklist provided in the manual. There you can see the guidelines for a successful 3. The checklist, as I said, is available in the manual. Please make use of this for every submission. So check against the criteria, the one with the 1, 2, 3s, and use the checklist. So is there a title? Yes or no? Is the title short, specific, and related to the competency standard? Yes or no? So before even submitting your CPD to your tutor, use the checklist, evaluate your submission, make sure everything that needs to be there is there. Once you've done the checklist, do the criteria, and then submit to your tutor and ask them to use the criteria, the grid as well, with the 0, the 1, the 2. And then your CPD will definitely be successful if you critically evaluate what you have submitted. You can see the reflection. Have I clearly stated what I need to know or need to learn? Have I clearly stated in the first person, I need to know this? Have I identified a learning need for myself? And have I ensured not to include planning So please don't include your planning or your implementation here, and please do not refer to typed text within your evidence. That is not allowed. So now we've identified what we want to learn or something that we didn't know, and now we're going to plan that. So how exactly am I going to learn this? And what is my options? And here it's very important that you go and look at the behavioral statements to structure your planning, because the behavioral statement is what you want to provide evidence for at the end. So you have to plan towards that. So mention all the relevant sources and what you are going to do, how you are going to do it, why you are going to do it that way, and when you are going to do that. For example, if you want to evaluate a prescription, then you will say, I will consult Regulation 33 because that is where the current guidelines are provided, for example. So what and why? So that's very important. And remember, you are planning to do this, so it will be in future tense. Again, there you have a checklist. Description. Do you have a start date? It's in your internship, yes or no? It's a 1 or a 0. For your description, only a description of what happened or planning not related to the learning need. Planning is provided with reasoning behind the planning, no specific details. Number 2, specific details but not linking to the behavioral statements. And the perfect one will be detailed plan provided with reasoning for the planning and specific details of resources and linking to the behavioral statements. So it's very important to use the behavioral statements for your planning to ensure that you will be able to address all of them and you provide sufficient detail. So don't tell us, I'm going to read various articles. Tell us, I'm going to consult the World Health Organization, or I'm going to do this. Tell us exactly. If you want to use the GPP, you will state, I will consult the GPP section 2.1.8 for this reason, or which section you plan to do or to use. Don't tell us, I'm going to consult the Medicines Act, the Pharmacy Act, and the GPP, because you're not going to read the whole reference. Tell us which part you're specifically going to look at. So there you can see the perfect one. And we have a checklist again. Have I clearly stated how I am going to learn this? Have I identified which resources I will be using? How I will be using the resources? And have I written in future tense? So you can see with the checklist, you can make sure that you haven't included anything that shouldn't be here and have included the things that should be mentioned in your planning. The implementation, we're now at the third part, is the implementation, what you actually did. So remember, your planning was in future tense. Your implementation is now in the past tense. It's what you did. I consulted Regulation 33. I consulted the GPP Section 2.1. I consulted my tutor. Or whatever you did, you now present in the past tense, and you can have a look at the criteria again. And here you must link this section to your evidence. So you can see the description, invalid description, only description of evidence provided, but has no linkage to the behavioral statements, describe of how only, description of where only, description of what only, and there you can see it will only be a 1. We will talk a lot more about evidence, but evidence is very, very important. If the evidence is not valid or not relevant or not factually correct, you can see it's a 0. And on the other end of the scale, if the evidence is valid, current, authentic, sufficient, we'll talk about sufficient a little more, annotated, and linked to the description provided in the implementation, you will receive the full 3 in the mark range. So again, please keep it personal. I consulted the GPP. I talked to my tutor and describe and tell us everything that you did. So you can see there should be a golden thread going through this activity, because you told us what you want to learn. You told us how you plan to learn it. Now it's just the past tense of the planning. So what you wanted to do, now what you did. So every part of this submission should talk to one another. If you didn't mention the GPP in your planning, the GPP shouldn't suddenly be part of the evidence. Everything should be one story that you are telling us. So if you want to use the GPP should already be entered as part of your planning. So you can see how important these checklists are for you to ensure that the CPD is successful. And as I said, more about evidence a little bit later. So the perfect three for the description is what, where, when, and how, reference made to the evidence, and linked to the behavioral statements. Then you will receive the full 3 marks. And as I said, evidence, we will talk a lot more about evidence later when we get to the next slide. So we have a checklist again for implementation. Have I described exactly what I did? Yeah, there you can see the where, when, what, the how. Is it written in past tense? Have I referred to labels of my evidence? You'll see the assessors talk a lot about annotation. So the labels are the annotation of your evidence. Have I checked what I did matches my learning need? So did I address my learning need? Have I achieved what I set out to achieve in the beginning? And have I checked that what I addressed all the behavioral statements, so that I addressed all the behavioral statements? We will talk about the behavioral statements again and how many you should address, but it's always good practice to try and achieve all of the behavioral statements to be successful. Remember, your implementation must be supported by relevant, valid, sufficient evidence. So the evidence checklist. Have I checked that I have sufficient evidence and covered at least 75% of the behavioral statements? Have I annotated my evidence clearly? Have I annotated my evidence with the behavioral statements? Is my evidence clear, readable, not upside down, and in a single file? And have I made sure that all patient identifying details have been hidden? And please, that's very, very important. Please remember, for example, blue copies, the top and the bottom, Schedule 6 registered all the patients. There's a lot of places. Labels, when you take photos of the medication, please ensure that the patient is not identifiable. So the last step in the 4-step cycle is our evaluation. So now you have to evaluate what you have done. The focus here is on the learning outcome. What have you learned related to the evidence? Application, how have you applied the knowledge? And please give us an example. The impact, how has this acquired knowledge changed my practice? And a future learning need. So you can see there are 4 parts to this step. And this is not what you did. What you did was in the implementation. The focus here is what you learned, how the learning has influenced the way you practice. You can see what? The way you practiced by means of a practical example. So you have to give us a real example of how you applied this. And you have to provide a new learning need. So the learning need is very important. It should be related to what you've done. So if you did a compounding prescription, for example, or you made a compound, your future learning need will not be to host a public health campaign. It should still be within the same domain, something else you want to learn regarding this domain. Again, we have a checklist. Have I clearly stated what I learned from the action? Have I checked that my learning matches the learning need? Have I clearly described how this learning has impacted the way I practice? Have I given a specific example of how I applied my learning? And have I clearly noted my future learning needs? So you can see there are 4 things that you have to include for your evaluation to be successful. And there you can see each phase of the cycle must be completed for every CPD that you do. So you have to do these 4 steps for all 6 of the CPDs that you are going to submit. Remember, 1 in each domain and 1 competency standard from each domain. And you have to do all these steps for every one of them. Okay, so as Tabang said, it's a stepwise approach. And first of all, you've done your annual declaration, something happened in the pharmacy, and you are ready to select the domain. Then you select your competency standard. You've read all the behavioral statements. You start your CPD cycle. And then it's very important, and we just want to remind you to make a mental note that as soon as you submit your CPD goes to your tutor. And your tutor has to go through the CPD and select either return to intern or submit for assessment. So the moment that you have submitted your CPD on the platform, it has not really been submitted for assessment. It has been submitted for tutor verification. So please talk to your tutor, tell them when you plan to submit, make sure that they are available to authorize or verify your CPD online, because only once it's verified online, it is available for assessment. So the verification has to be done before the deadline and not only the submission. Once you check in the manual for the release date, once the results have been released, you can go back to your profile and you can check your report. You can check the feedback that you have been given by the assessor. And even if your CPD is successful, just go and check if they didn't make some recommendations for future submissions or made some comments that might be worthwhile for your next submission. So if you see green and it's successful, we'll be very happy, but just go and check if there is a report and if your assessor or your moderator hasn't made any comments that you can work into your future submissions. So there you can see, so focus on your practice setting, start the cycle, do all 4 steps, and make sure that your tutor verifies by the deadline. And that is very, very important. So please talk to your tutor regularly, show them the deadlines, show them when it should be submitted, and talk to them to make sure that you are on time. Okay, so once you've chosen a competency standard, so check that it's appropriate for where you practice. If you are not in manufacturing, you won't do line openings, so then that won't be appropriate for you. Read all the behavioral statements, decide on appropriate and sufficient evidence, and as you complete each phase of the cycle, make sure that what you write is relevant, and please use the checklists. So the requirements, Tabang has spoken about them. You need to submit 6 CPDs, 1 from each domain. You have to be successful in all 6 CPDs at 6 CPD entries. And we do advise not to submit all 6 your entries at once. We know you want to submit, but maybe just submit 3 or whatever you decide. And have a look what comes back from the assessor and the moderator. There's sometimes things that you don't think about or a mistake that you make in every submission, and it's just something small that you can correct. So maybe just submit 1 or 2 or 3 at most. Wait for feedback during the first round. See what comes back. See if you're on the right track, if you are making any unnecessary mistakes, and then resubmit or submit the other 3. Whatever, if you are successful in 3 of them, then do the other 3. If you're not successful, correct what was wrong and submit the rest of the CPDs. So for each domain, choose 1 competency standard. Read all the behavioral statements carefully. If there are 1 to 3 behavioral statements, you have to provide evidence for all of them. If there are more than 4, some competency standards have 9 or 8. If there are more than 4, you have to provide evidence for at least 75%. So please consult your manual, and don't think if there's 1 behavioral statement, it's a very easy CPD. Or if there are 8, it's very difficult. Look at the behavioral statements before you decide and make sure that you provide sufficient evidence. And it's very important that your CPD entry should reflect your own work. It should be your individual work and no group activities will be accepted. Good, now we're going over to evidence. Evidence is extremely important and evidence needs to adhere to the following criteria. It should be annotated, it should be current, it should be valid, it should be authentic, and it should be sufficient. So evidence should adhere to all of these for evidence to be successful. So what is annotated? Annotated is a mechanism to give meaning to evidence. It should be legible and easy to read. It should give a justification why the evidence is included or why you have included that specific resource or page or document. It must be planned and meaningful, and it must provide links to the behavioral statements. It must tell a story, and the story is, what have I done to show a behavior? You need to show us that you're now able to do something, that you are able to achieve the behavioral statements. Annotation isn't merely labels, it's not single words, it's not scribbles, and it should not lack links to the behavioral statements. So if we look at this, for example, we see a lot of interns, if they evaluate a prescription, they will say, this is the date. That is an annotation with no value because everybody can see it's a date. What you have to do with your annotation is you have to provide meaning. What was the relevance of the date? Why was the date important? So you can see a meaningful annotation would be, for a prescription to be valid, it must be presented for dispensing within 1 month after it was written. This prescription is thus valid. So can you see the difference? So everybody knows it's a date, but you as an intern must tell us why the date was important to begin with and what is the meaning of the date on a prescription. Why should it be there? If we look at annotation a little bit more, you can see we have an invoice from a supplier. And how will we annotate? What do you think of this? So we have an account number, we have a batch number, we have a pharmacy name, but it doesn't really say anything. I don't know what this intern is trying to tell me. I don't know what this means. I don't know why it has been included in this as part of evidence. So if we look at another one, you can see this one is a little bit more neat. It was typed in, but still, invoice from a wholesaler, name of the medicine. What about it? Why is the expiry date important? Why is the batch number important? What is the intern trying to say with these annotations or with these labels? So you have to give meaning to the person looking at this. So do you think this is good? It's neat, but what's the relevance of all these labels? So if we look at this one, and we can spend some time just looking at this, I checked the name of the pharmacy on the parcel to confirm that it is indeed for my pharmacy. There, at the right hand, competency standard 3.2E, the end phase of the procurement of medicine. Medicine name, I checked the name of the medicine, the strength, and the pack size. Batch number, I compared the batch number with the batch number on the parcel or on the invoice or on the box to ensure that it's the same. And this is important for batch traceability. So immediately now you can see that these annotations has meaning. The intern has told us why they checked the name, why they checked the batch number. Expiry date. I checked the expiry date to confirm that the medicine is not short dated. I used the expiry date to pack the medicine on the shelf according to the FIFO principle. So now you can see these labels are not merely attached to the invoice. It explains why every part of this invoice is important to the intern and how they used this how they used the expiry date and why they used it. At the bottom, you can see the parcel was received in good order, which is very important. The medicine was not damaged or short-dated. It was captured onto the system, and the medicine was stored on the shelf below 25 degrees. So you can see this invoice now has meaning, and I know exactly what the intern did with this invoice. So if we talk about the quality, this is good quality annotation. It's linked to a behavioral statement, and it has meaning. So current, what are we talking about? Current. Current means it should be in your internship year. So the CPD must relate to exposure during your internship. Evidence must therefore be collected during your internship. And please, please do not include any evidence that you have collected from undergraduate years. So if you did a research project in your 4th year, please do not use that to submit as a CPD. So please, everything, it can be a resource that you consulted, but it cannot be something that you did last year. Valid. If we talk about your evidence is valid, it must pertain to a specific competency being addressed. And remember, if there's any factual errors or calculation errors, the evidence is immediately deemed not valid, and the whole CPD is therefore not successful. So if we talk about it must pertain to a specific competency. If you talk about, let's use again pharmacist-initiated therapy, and you include a prescription here, a prescription would not be valid for pharmacist-initiated therapy, then the evidence is not valid. So it must pertain and it must be specific for the competency. And please be careful for calculation errors. For example, if the competency is about how to fry an egg and your evidence is how crispy the bacon is, it is of no value. Authentic means it's your own work. And remember, the evidence must be verified online by your tutor. Tutor verification, make sure that your tutor verifies your entries, and it's your responsibility to check and to remind your tutor to go onto the system and verify your CPD submission. Remember, as I said previously, a CPD is not submitted for assessment unless it has gone through tutor verification. So if there are 4 more behavioral statements, evidence must cover at least 75% of the behavioral statements. So you must make sure that you have enough evidence. Please focus on quality and not the quantity of the evidence. Interns ask us a lot, but how much evidence? What is, when is it enough? It's not about the amount of evidence. It's about what you are trying to say with the evidence. Remember, the same piece of evidence can't be used for more than one competency standard. So you can't use one prescription in domain 1 and the same, or domain 2.6 and the same prescription in another domain. And do not submit entire legislative documents. For sufficient, if you are using the GPP, please don't attach the whole GPP, or the Pharmacy Act, don't attach the whole Pharmacy Act, just the section that you plan to use. And as I said previously, there's not a specific amount of evidence that's enough. Evidence should address the behavioral statements. Once you address all the behavioral statements, then it is enough. So do not add evidence that may have clauses for intellectual property, especially for manufacturing interns. If there are clauses for intellectual property, make sure that you are allowed to use it and you do not need to redact too much of the information. So sufficient, as I said, if it is 4 or more behavioral statements, 75%, and one piece of evidence can be used for more than one behavioral statement in one CPD, but it's depending on what you want to prove. Okay, just a quick poll. Natalie, I'm sure the poll is in the chat.
We're putting it in right now.
Thank you. So this is just a quick question. If We have a CPD with 8 behavioral statements. For how many behavioral statements should we provide evidence? I think I remember correctly. So if you click on the poll, there you will see. You choose a competency standard that has 8 behavioral statements. 75% of the behavioral statements needs evidence. How much evidence must you submit? So for how many behavioral statements should you submit evidence? 3, 4, 5, or 6?
Adele, all the votes have been for number 6.
Okay, well done. So I think everybody has a clear understanding of the minimum requirements for sufficient for the behavioral statements. So you have to address at least 6 if we have 8 behavioral statements. If we talk a little bit about evidence, if you're going to use photographs, it's good, but please date stamp them or make an annotation of when the photograph was taken. Please identify yourself on the photograph and tell us what is happening in the photograph. It can be anybody. Remember, the assessor doesn't know who you are, so you have to maintain patient confidentiality and you have to identify yourself. Please stay away from glossy photos. If you look at your evidence, they are sometimes very difficult to assess because they become very black. So just have a look before you submit. Pages from the SAMF or any other reference, for example, please tell us which edition and which page number you use. Why have you included this? Sometimes interns submit a whole page of the SAMF and they, for example, use the dosage of a certain medication. So make an annotation at the dosage and say, this is the dosage, it aligns with the prescription, or I looked at the contraindications on this page, or I used the allergies, or whatever you used on that page. Just show the assessor and the moderator why you used that page, what information you used on this page, and how you used it. So what does this page show? Does it show that you can use a scanner or a photocopier, or have you made meaningful annotation to show us how this page assisted you? Delivery notes, for example, what does it show? If you signed for stock, tell us, this is my signature, I signed for the stock, I checked the order numbers, I checked the invoices, or what the case may be. So you can see how very important meaningful annotation is. So again, put yourself in the assessor's shoes before submitting evidence and ask yourself, what does this show? It will probably point to a need for more discussion or more annotation, more meaningful annotation. So after you've done this, look at each page very critically and ask yourself, what does this show? What does it tell the assessor? Okay, so now evidence, we're talking about evidence. As I've stated previously, please no high glossy photos. They assess very difficult to assess. Please make sure that your evidence is not uploaded upside down. We get a lot of submissions, then one page is this way, another page is that way, this one's upside down. It's very difficult to assess. The evidence must be clear and legible. Please submit in one PDF document. And very important, as you've heard from me previously, annotate, annotate, annotate. And I want to add to that, annotate meaningfully. Link your evidence to a behavioral statement, identify your signature, and remember the assessor doesn't know you. You have to give context. You have to tell them why it's there, why you have included the evidence, what part of the story does that document tell, and where does it fit in within the behavioral statements? Okay, so now we talk about what kind of evidence. For example, I'm providing information to a patient. What can you add there? A prescription can be one of them. What else can you provide? Maybe a patient information leaflet, maybe feedback from the patient, maybe somebody that witnessed the interaction can provide some feedback, a checklist from the patient. So there's a lot of things. You You need to be very creative. There's a lot of things you can do. And if you're providing information to a group, what can we add there? Maybe an attendance register, my presentation, the reference materials that you used, feedback that you received. So you can see there's a lot of things that you can use. For an attendance register, please add your presenter name, your date and your venue. Remember, no group activities, so it's only one presenter. Feedback that you received should reflect the knowledge and understanding of the audience after the presentation. It's not only rating of the presenter, and remember to annotate and link to the behavioral statements. So what if you're consulting a patient? What can be evidence there? The patient history, prescription, the request that you received from the patient, the blue copy, labels, reference material, either the SAMF or professional information leaflets, or any information that you used, you can include there. If you're consulting with a prescriber, a doctor, you can give us the reason for the consultation, the reference material that you used if there was some kind of interaction or you wanted to call the prescriber regarding a dosage, a telephone number of the doctor, the time that you found him, and maybe a verification of someone that witnessed the interaction. References, it should be scientific, please, no Wikipedia. It must be annotated and linked to the behavioral statement. And again, include page numbers and additions, for example, the SAMF. And very important for legislation, make sure that you use current legislation. So sometimes if you attend a meeting, what can you add? There we can suggest maybe an agenda, attendance register, minutes, and very important, you have to show what your contribution in the meeting was. Just sitting in a meeting is not sufficient. You have to tell us what you did in the meeting or how you contributed to the meeting. If you are working with data, the reason for the data collection, for example, the screening report, the analysis, anything that you did with the data. And again, please look at the checklist for the evidence. I have checked that I have sufficient evidence. It's annotated. It's annotated with the behavioral statements. It's clear and readable, and there's no identifiers for the patient. So evidence is proof of what you did. It's not merely reading an article. It's not theoretical. You have to actually be able to do this, and it's not witnessing someone else doing this. You must convince the assessor and the moderator that you are now able to perform this activity successful. Please, it must be professional, neat and clear, and not only scribbles. And I performed this. And Tabang, I think this is where I stop for this part of the presentation. And I think we have a small break, and then Dr. Hubert will continue. If you can just confirm what time we should reconvene.
Okay, thanks, Adele. I think we will come back at 10 to 8. 10 to 8.
Okay, thank you, everybody. We'll just a quick body break, and we'll see you at 10 to 8.
Thank you.
Hi, Tabang, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Should I continue or are we still waiting?
Are you controlling the slides yourself?
Yes, yes, I'm.
Okay.
I'm
I think
controlling.
it's time. We can continue. It's time. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, good evening, colleagues. Yes, as Mrs. Nadia said, I'm Dr. Yanda Ubat. I'm a moderator of your CPDs. So I'm going to continue where Mrs. Nadia have ended, and we're going to look at an example. So we're going to start with a quick poll. There's a trigger incident. I was asked to participate in a public health campaign. If Natalie, if you can just maybe just post the poll link again in the Q&A, then interns can answer that. I
Okay,
think
it is in the comments.
Is it in the comment? Okay, so I think the question is regarding the domain, to which domain would this learning trigger align to if you were asked to participate in a public health campaign?
Okay, we've got 1 vote for domain 5, 2 votes for domain 3, 2 votes for domain 2, and 37 votes for domain 1.
Okay, so yes, indeed, it is domain 1, which is public health. So the relevant domain would then be 1, public health, and then the relevant competency within that domain would be competency standard 1.1, which is the promotion of health and wellness. So if we look again at the structure of the competency standards, we are now in domain 1, which is public health, and then there's the short introduction. It covers and includes competencies that are required in both the public and private health sector to promote health and wellness through the provision of healthcare information and education to the public and other members of the healthcare team. So it's important here, if you select domain 1, that it should be aimed at the public and other members of the healthcare team, not just members of the healthcare team. It should include the public as well. And then there's 4 behavioral statements listed underneath 1.1. You should be able to provide advice on health promotion, provide advice on disease prevention and control, provide advice on healthy lifestyles, and participate in public health campaigns. So it's important that you need to be able to show this. How did you provide the advice on health promotion? How did you provide the advice on disease prevention and control? So that is what we need to see from that. So we're going to do 2 more polls on this example. The first one, you should choose the most appropriate learning title that's listed. We can do that one first, and then the second one, the best learning need based on the competency standard. So Natalie, if you can just please post that poll again.
Right, both polls are now in the comment section.
Okay, so the first, the choose the most appropriate learning title. The options there: participation in COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital. The second one, promotion of health and wellness, or the third one, promotion of COVID-19. So which one of those would be the more suitable or the more appropriate learning title? Natalie, I don't know if you have a result there yet.
The votes are slowly coming in.
Slowly coming in.
Yeah. Okay. 8 votes for participation in COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital.
Okay. Yes, that would be the most appropriate, because it is more descriptive. It states what are you going to do, what is it about, and where is it going to take place. Okay, if we move to the next one, which would be the best learning need based on the competency standard, if you should describe that, make a choice between I needed to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns, or I needed to learn how to listen properly, or I needed to learn how to teach. It's quite obvious, I think.
100% of the votes are for I needed to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns.
Yes, so that is the correct one. So that is the best learning need, or the most appropriate learning need for this case. So here we have a combination of the checklist that Mrs. Nordia also showed you. So if we look at the reflection, firstly, we start with the learning title. We said participation in COVID-19 health campaign at Steve Biko Academic Hospital. So you can see it's original, it's descriptive, and it's related to the case or the scenario presented, meaning that it is related to the learning need. What triggered the learning? The learning need is there, and then what do I hope to achieve? So my pharmacy manager asked me to participate in a COVID-19 health campaign, and I did not know what this entailed. So it is a clear trigger provided. I needed to learn how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns. So that is what I needed to learn to do. Remember, your learning need should relate to the competency standard and not the activity. So it should relate to promotion of health and wellness and not COVID-19. So you needed to learn how to provide advice. You didn't need, if you wrote, I needed to learn more about COVID-19, and then it shouldn't have been correct in the sense of the competency standard that you have selected. So then we would have said, you have not identified your learning need in relation to the competency standard. And then I hope to be familiar with the steps required to plan and successfully participate in a public health campaign. So there's a clear learning need and an indication of what you as an intern hope to achieve after you have completed the competency. If we move on to the planning, remember, this is just an example. This is not what you should put in if you do 1.1. This is just, for this example, a guideline on what can be provided. So I plan to make a poster using relevant sources. The relevant sources should be valid, current, authentic, and sufficient. And then the sources are listed there: National Department of Health and World Health Organization policies and guidelines, SAPC website. Here you should add the relevant details. So which part of the WHO, or what part of the National Department of Health are you just going to put in there? You're going to look at the website of the National Department of Health. Which part? What are you going to look for in those sources that you are going to use? I will include information on health promotion, healthy lifestyles, and disease prevention and control. You can see it's linked to the behavioral statements. I will verify the poster with my tutor. I'll use the poster in my health campaigns, get the feedback. Here you can add, then you can say, for example, the attendance register. Just remember that the attendance register alone is not sufficient to show that you have participated in a public health campaign. I will obtain a participation letter. This can be from the occupational health specialist at the hospital, or it can be from your tutor or the RP or whoever have organized this campaign that you have participated in. I plan to participate in the COVID-19 screening using the screening tool. Then it would be also linked to behavioral statement D. And why all this planning? I did all this in order to be able to participate in a public health campaign. You could have also added why the relevant resources. There you could have added, because this would give me the most up-to-date information on COVID-19. Why would I verify the poster with my tutor? My tutor will know if this will be sufficient information for the public, if the public will be able to understand this. So you need to explain why this plan, why you're going to use this plan. So this is, but remember, this is just an example. So there we have detailed plan provided together with the reasoning behind the planning and the details of the resources that we did in the beginning, and it's linked to at least 75% of the behavioral statements. Usually in the planning, if it is not sufficient or it is not linked, you will see a comment that I often make is use the behavioral statements to help you structure your planning, because that is what you need to provide evidence for. Use the behavioral statements and don't just copy them in your planning. Implementation. It's the third step. So here you have to say, you provide the description. How did you do this? What did I do? How, when, or where? So I consulted the following sources: National Department of Health, link it to Evidence A or 1.1A, and WHO Policies and Guidelines, which is Evidence B or 1.1B, and the SAPC website, which is Evidence C. I formulated the poster to use in the campaign. Again, link it to the evidence. Typically, Evidence D would then be the poster that you include. And on the poster, you will annotate the information that you have, the specific information that you've put on there to provide advice on a healthy lifestyle, provide advice on disease prevention, so that you will then annotate on your poster. And then I presented the poster at the COVID-19 screening area at the entrance of the hospital on a busy outpatient day. Here you can add the attendance register. Important to maintain patient confidentiality, so block out the information of the names and the surnames of the patients or addresses, anything that can identify the patient. And I did the screening using the screening tool, and then I received the feedback from my supervisor and obtained a letter of participation from the health and safety manager. And again, link it then to the evidence and put all of these pieces of evidence as your evidence in. So as Mrs. Nadia said, your planning was in future tense, and now your implementation is in the past tense. So it is almost the same, but now you just say, I did this. So remember, in the planning we said I'm planning to consult the relevant resources. I'm gonna design a poster. I'm gonna present it at the public health campaign, and now I've put that in action. So now you put that in your evidence. So everything that you plan, that you put in your planning, must be in your evidence as well. If you say you're going to use WHO, then we want to see the page from the WHO that you have used, annotated which part of that page or on that page you used. Okay, time for another poll. This one will be on the evidence. And remember, this is just a guideline. This is not the sole evidence. This is just an example. Select an example of evidence you think will be suitable for this competency standard. And then the choices is a photo of myself at the entrance of the hospital, poster that was used, annotated attendance register, or a blank patient feedback form, which would be more suitable to use in this for this competency standard. Natalie, do you have any, have they responded yet? Any answers yet?
We've had 3 votes for a poster that was used, and we've had 10 votes for annotated attendance register.
Okay. So the poster is not incorrect. You will use the poster, but if the option was an annotated poster, then it would have been more acceptable. So the annotated attendance register, that would be from the list that was provided, that would be the most suitable or appropriate option to select. So not any one of those is completely incorrect. I would probably say if it is just a photo of you at the entrance of the hospital and nothing else, then it would be doubtful. That won't really pass as good evidence. But if it was a photo of you at the entrance of the hospital where the setup was for the public health campaign or for the screening day, and it's clear on the photo that it is part of the screening day, then that photo can be included as long as it is annotated. So annotations is very, very important. Just the attendance register without any annotation is meaningless. Just a photo or just a poster without any annotations doesn't have any meaning. So possible evidence that you could have included: the source documents with specific annotations, the GPP, the page number and the chapter, health education tools, the detailed poster that you provided, or you have decided on a pamphlet that you're going to create, or you're going to do a presentation. So any of those tools. Letter of participation, important to highlight your role. If it was say for example, a screening day, then it is important that that participation letter states that intern with this name and this P number was responsible for setting up the tables or calibrating the glucose meters, or so it must be specific. What was your role in that day? How did you participate in that day? Attendance register, as I said, remember the confidentiality, and important, where does it fit in? So where does it fit in with the competency standard? How many behavioral statements did I cover with this evidence that I have provided? I've noticed one of the questions in the Q&A questions that was posted, we're going to answer them all at the end, was how many evidence, or how long should the evidence be? And again, there's no answer to that. It is evidence sufficient that can show that you have done and successfully completed the behavioral statements. Show us with your evidence how you have applied an SOP or applied a policy or participated in a health campaign. Or so there's no, we can't say 10 pages, we can't say 50 pages, we can't say 1 page. There is no answer to that. It is as long as you have covered at least 75% of the behavioral statements, if there's 4 or more behavioral statements. And then the evaluation, again, you can see the criteria there at the top. So what was learned? Remember, if you want to score a 3, you must say what was learned and how it have influenced your way of practice, and you have to show and provide an application by means of an example, and you have to identify a future learning need. So I learned how to provide advice and participate in public health campaigns. How the learning influenced your practice. I'm now more confident to volunteer to participate in public health campaigns. Application. I subsequently participated in a diabetic screening day, and I am more aware of public health issues. So notice here that the application, the example, is not 3 days later I was able to provide information to a patient on whose husband have tested positive for COVID-19. So it is the application in practice should be about the skill that you have now obtained and that you have now learned. So if your competency standard was 2.6, provide pharmacist-initiated therapy, and the tool or the vehicle that you used was a patient that complained about a cough, and it was a hypertensive patient, and you didn't know how to, the whole story around pharmacist-initiated therapy, then your application should not be 3 days later, a different hypertensive patient ask for cough medication. Then it should be a few days later, a patient entered the pharmacy and requested treatment for diarrhea. And I was able to apply my knowledge and to provide pharmacist-initiated therapy. So it must be for the competency standard, applicable to the competency standard, the new skill that you have acquired. And then your future learning need, I would like to learn more on providing advice to other healthcare workers. So it is related to the domain and the competency standard. So perfect 3 marks would have been if you have included all 4 of these aspects. Okay, if we move on to assessment, we have shown you now the criteria, and you would have seen that it is most of the time done on a scale of 0 to 3. But remember, there's different weightings applied to each step. And to earn all 3 marks, all the requirements must be met. Again, look at the assessment criteria for each phase of the cycle. And in addition to that, you must at least have used appropriate professional communication styles. I know we all make at some stage a typing error, but try to not make, to provide, to submit a CPD that is free of spelling and grammatical errors, that is properly punctuated, and that you capitalize trade names and weekdays. And if you use I, that I is with a capital letter. I have seen CPDs where there's no capital letters used, and it's really not professional. So try to use appropriate professional communication styles, and remember that your spelling and your grammar are not auto-corrected. So check everything before you submit. Usually I advise my interns to first type the CPD in Word and put on the spell check there. So I know some of you might have Grammarly, that program that can help you check it. And at least then you can see where you have made some spelling or typing errors, and then copy and paste it onto the website if you want to submit your CPD. But make sure that at least you communicate professional. So the scales are 0 not yet met, 1 partially met. So you're almost there, but there's still things missing. You have met it, and then fully met, you have addressed everything that you need to address. Just again, check in the manual, page 29 and 30 for the full details of how the marks are allocated. It is that assessment criteria table that Mrs. Ndia have shown and that we have used in the example. Okay, so if you are assessed, then you can expect to get comments from the assessor. The comments will be dated. If there will be positive comments, which will acknowledge that you are on the right track, even if it is just something as simple as a clear learning title and learning need, or planning accepted. So there will be something so that you can make sure or be sure that you are on the right track and that you have done this correctly. Negative comments, there will also be negative comments with specific pointers to what you did wrong and how you can improve on that. And then especially with regards to the evidence and the annotation of the evidence. That is usually where assessors and moderators make the most comments is with the evidence. And use your comments as guidelines for your next entries, even if you are successful in an entry. Sometimes it happens that it's partially met, and then you score a 50, or and then the assessor right there, I will give you the benefit with the planning, but you need to link it to the behavioral statements, or in the comments there will be some hint. So this time I'm going to give you the benefit. I can see that you can do this, but then for a following CPD that's in a different domain, then you think what you've done was sufficient, and now it is not, or now it is not so clear. So look at the comments. Even if you are successful, please don't ignore the comments. Go and look at the comments and read through the comments. But just remember, if you are successful, you don't need to resubmit again. Even if there's comments that state that your learning need is not so clear, or you did not indicate what you hope to achieve after addressing the learning need. You don't need to correct that if you have been successful. Just take note that the comments are there to guide you for future submissions. Later in the year, in June or July, we have not the dates yet, there will be a feedback session that will also be presented by assessors or moderators. So remember to look out for communication from council on those feedback sessions. There you can ask all your questions. It's more an interactive session where you can ask questions and regarding your CPDs and your evidence. Okay, so if you were found not yet successful, then you need to resubmit a CPD within that domain. Important to remember that each resubmission is a standalone entry and it is treated as a new submission. So we look at previous evidence as well. So rather remove the evidence that is on there. Don't leave the evidence there and just add evidence, because then your incorrect evidence is still there. So it's best to start with a new CPD unless the assessor has recommended that you can correct or fix the CPD. But therefore you will have to look at the comment section. If it is patient confidentiality, if that is the only problem with your evidence, then you can just fix that part where you have breached patient confidentiality and you can resubmit that again. But usually if it is something else, it is better to start over and start with a new one. If you have, for example, debt compounding and your expiry date was incorrect, or the product that you have used, one of the products in your compound expired before your expiry date, then you can't fix that. It's done. The patient have used the medication. Hopefully didn't happen anything bad to that patient. But then you have to redo it. Then you have to start over. But look at the comments made by the assessor. Also look at the guidelines for the conditions of resubmission, the application procedure, and then the timeline also involved with that. So make sure that you submit early. We have said that, Tabang have said that, Mrs. Nudi have said that, submit early and submit regularly so that you're not in a predicament in October where you submit all 6 entries for the first time, unless you have registered later in the year. But if you have registered in January, make sure that you submit regularly and early. Don't wait for, if the deadline is the 22nd of March, don't wait for the 21st to submit. Your tutor have to verify still and then submit. So make sure that you are in time and look at the comments. You can, I think you can remember that you have, here we get to that, you're allowed to submit 9 CPDs And from the 10th one onwards, you will have to pay a levy if you submit more than 10 entries. So make sure that you follow the assessor's recommendations or comments. And remember that it is your resubmitted CPD is sent to the same assessor. Don't think you're just going to resubmit and maybe it gets sent to another assessor and you're lucky then. It comes to the same person. And if it was moderated the first time, it will be moderated the second time if you resubmit again. So please look at the comments and address them. It is really frustrating if you moderate or assess a CPD entry for the 4th time and you still and the same comments is still there, and you see that the intern have not made any changes to the submission. On the right hand side here, on the screen, you can see it's the same example that Tabang used in her presentation, the unsuccessful CPD entry and the successful one on the right hand side. And there's comments that you can look at with both of them. The one on the right in green says successful, and in red on the left hand side it is not yet successful. So then you should then make the changes and start with the resubmission. It is why we say rather do it over, start with a new one. I know sometimes people forget things. You forget to add your attendance register. And now suddenly you have done the presentation in February, you were assessed in March and you did not have the attendance register, and now you resubmit, and in May there's still no attendance register. You have now added some other stuff. The comment is still there, where's your attendance register? And now in June suddenly you have the attendance register. Or you have a completed questionnaire that the patients have done. So rather make sure that you submit everything, that you include all your evidence that you collect. And that is why verification process from the tutor is so important, because that can also, it's just another step to help you interns to submit complete entries. So that's why we say rather, if it's not successful and it's not indicated that you just need to fix one small thing, for example, patient confidentiality that was breached, to rather start over. It is important that you do not plagiarize. Your CPDs must obviously reflect your own work, because it is what you need to learn. If there's any irregularities, it will be referred to Council's legal department, and you will be penalized. It will be applied and it will be severe. We have, unfortunately, it happened last year that there was an intern that was, I don't want to say caught out, that sounds very harsh, but identified by an assessor that was using a colleague's work. And yes, it was moderated as well by me, and it was shockingly how similar the entries were. So do your own work, please. Don't think. Don't wait for your colleague, and if they are successful, use or copy their CPDs. You will be caught out. It happened. Don't see a CPD as just another hurdle. See them as an opportunity for yourself to develop and to grow in your professional career. You will have to do CPDs for the rest of your life as long as you are a practicing pharmacist. You see it as an opportunity to learn. We have spoken about confidentiality. It must be maintained at all times. Important, not only prescriptions, also trailer labels, blue copies, Schedule 6 registers, attendance registers. If confidentiality is breached, you're automatically not yet successful. And confidentiality applies only to patients, not to doctors and hospitals or other facilities, not to staff attendance registers. I know that there have been interns that said due to the POPI Act, they need to block out the doctor's information as well. This is for training. The doctors, we can find the information online. If you go to the HPCSA website, the information is there. So I know it's POPI Act, but if you blank out everything, there's nothing to assess. I always say, if the doctor made a terrible mistake, which can happen, and it can harm his work as a doctor or his registration, then you can hide or black out his name. But otherwise, just the patient's information, and make sure that it is completely obscured, like there on the left where there's a black box and not just the scribble, and make sure that if you convert your evidence from Word to PDF and you have put a block on, that the block doesn't move, because then you have breached patient confidentiality. So make sure about that as well. Okay, so you are now ready to start the stepwise approach to complete a CPD entry. Remember, you must choose a domain and you must choose a competency standard. But let's firstly look at some tips and comments to assist you in choosing an appropriate competency standard from each domain. And we have worked on this together, the assessors and moderators, and between us, we have assessed and moderated many CPDs. We have a lot of years experience. So we decided that we're going to provide you with a decision-making aid or a decision-making tool where there's 3 options: a recommended one, possible, and then challenging. If it's recommended, then it's a good choice, and there shouldn't be any problems for any intern to complete the competency standard successful. If we say it's possible, then consider it carefully. Only choose it if you are able to collect valid and sufficient evidence. If we say it's challenging, rather avoid, because it will be difficult to complete and to find sufficient evidence. Okay, so we're going to go through all the domains. I'm just going to go through them quickly because we're going to do the same activity for the evidence as well. So we're just going to go through them quickly. Remember, the presentation will be made available on Council's website, so you can go back and use this as a tool to help you. If we look at domain 1, the only 2 competency standards that we really recommend that interns do is 1.1 and 1.6. If you do 1.6, it must include a screening activity. And if you select 1.1, remember that it is about public health. 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4 is challenging for interns to do. 1.5 is possible. In 2020, in the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a lot of interns that submitted 1.5, and they were able to show that they have implemented a disaster management plan. All the pharmacies had to come up with a plan how they're going to the social distancing and the whole planning around that. So it is possible to do that, but then we want to see the active participation in how was the disaster management plan developed and implemented. If we look at domain 2, the recommended ones are 2.1, which is patient consultation, 2.2, patient counseling, or 2.6, pharmacist-initiated therapy. 2.3, 4, and 5 is possible, and 7 as well, but 2.8 is really challenging because that involves clinical trials, so you have to be actively involved in a registered clinical trial. So it is difficult to do that one. 2.4 is better suited for institutional settings. but the focus should be on dispensing errors and not prescribing errors. And for 2.5, you must be sure to understand the scope of a therapeutic outcome monitoring. But patient counseling is easier to do. We do that every day if you're in a pharmacy. And pharmacist-initiated therapy is also easy to do. If you work in an institutional pharmacy and you really want to do 2.6, pharmacist-initiated therapy, then it is advisable that you go to a community or a retail pharmacy and make an arrangement there with the pharmacist there, and that you just do that one CPD activity there. Get some experience and exposure in pharmacist-initiated therapy, and then do the CPD there. So that is possible. Domain 3, the recommended ones is 3.2, 3.4, and 3.5. Possible to do 3.1 if you're in manufacturing, then you can do that because it's got to do with line clearances and line openings. 3.6, we had a few interns that have attempted 3.6, but there's just 3 behavioral statements, so you need to provide evidence for all of them. And you can only do that one and be successful if you are actually exposed to a medicine recall, not just an example of a letter or what should be done in a recall, the actual recall, and how you have handled that and executed that. 3.4 and 3.5 are the easier one to do. 3.4 covers all dispensing activities. There's a lot of behavioral statements. I think there's 9 of them. But it is if I was an intern, I would have selected that one, but that is just me. Don't all of you go and do that one now. 3.5 is compounding. It's only have 1 behavioral statement. Don't let it fool you and make you think that it is easy, because you need to include the discussion on the application of pharmaceutical principles. But then you can use either bulk or extemporaneous compounding. Remember, reconstitution of an antibiotic is not compounding. It's not compounding. If you just need to add 91 milliliters of water to a powder, it is not compounding. That's reconstitution. So make sure if you select compounding that you include all aspects of pharmaceutical principles. Domain 4, the recommended one competency standard is 4.6, where you need to, there's 2 behavioral statements. It is apply policies and apply SOPs. And that, in my opinion, is the easiest one of domain 4 to do, because there are millions of SOPs in the pharmacy. You need to be able to apply all of them. And it's not difficult to apply the policies then. Most SOPs come from a policy that you can use then. So the recommended one is 4.6. 4.2 is really challenging. It's financial management. It is more than just submitting a claim to a medical aid. It's bigger than that. So don't attempt 4.2. 4.3 is also possible. But don't just look at the infrastructure of the. Well, do not include the infrastructure of the pharmacy. But the recommended competency standard for domain 4 is 4.6. Domain 5, there's only one. It's compulsory for all of you to do 5.3, so you are not allowed to select any of the other competency standards. And then domain 6, we recommend that you do 6.2, provision of training and education. And this is in a workplace. So this is where you will provide training and education to pharmacist assistants. Or then 6.6, which is research. 6.1 is challenging. Don't attempt that one because it should include application of pharmacy education policy. 6.3 is only applicable to formal undergraduate training at universities, so it's more suitable for academic interns. but again, look at the behavioral statements and make sure that you will be able to address them. I wouldn't recommend that you attempt 6.4, 6.5, or 6.7 is not possible. It cannot be completed by interns because you have to supervise other researchers, so it's not possible for an intern to do that. And again, 6.8 is also a bit challenging, but it can be done by academic interns. Okay. So now you are ready to complete the cycle. Remember to complete all 4 steps of the cycle. And now we're going to look at some guidelines to some of the evidence that you might need for selected or specific competency standards from each domain. Remember again, this is just a guideline. This is not set in stone. Your evidence will differ for the situation and the learning need that you have. Again, if we start with domain 1, we said we recommend 1.1. Show how you have provided the information on a poster, and you must promote health. Your evidence could include an attendance register. Remember, an attendance register needs to have a date, a place where this education or this presentation happened, the date and the time. You can also add to that a patient questionnaire or survey at the end that you have asked the patients to complete and to evaluate their understanding of the topic that you presented on. We also said 1.6 there, we need to see the screening tool at least. Remember, this is just a guideline. Domain 2, we said 2.1, 2.2, or 2.6 are the recommended competency standards. For 2.1, some of the evidence that you can provide: the nature of the problem, the consultation area, the duration of the consultation, the language that was used, which sensitive and insensitive issues that you address. If you look at counseling 2.2, how did your counseling plan look like? Provide that. Patient feedback on understanding, tutor statement. How did you handle sensitive issues? All the aids that you use to help you. If you use the patient information leaflet, show that. Provide that, but it is important that we can see that you can counsel someone. If you select 2.6, you can include the information on pamphlet relating to the condition, the referral letter that the pharmacy used to refer patients to the doctor, patient history, medication history, patient's profile. But again, let the behavioral statements guide you there. Domain 3, if you are doing your internship in manufacturing and you select 3.1, be aware of intellectual property concerns. I know these. It happened in the past that interns in manufacturing selected a specific case or a scenario, and then intellectual property became an issue, and they couldn't provide some of the evidence. And then so don't put yourself in that situation. Rather than select a different competency standard. 3.4, you can provide the prescription, obviously, would be necessary. Section 33 of the Act. You can use the SNF. You can use screenshots of the patient's profile, how you updated it. If you do 3.5, compounding, include evidence to show that you understand pharmaceutical knowledge, SOP, your calculations that you made, the batch manufacturing sheet, the actual final product that you made, and make sure that your expiry date do not exceed 30 days. Remember, if you make an extemporaneous compound, the expiry date cannot be more than 30 days because of instabilities in the different constituents. Domain 4, we said we recommend that you do the 4.6. So here you need to provide the SOP that you want to apply as well as the policy, and then by means of annotation link the rest of your evidence to show us how you have applied this SOP. If the SOP is on manufacturing or not manufacturing, compounding, for example, then if there's a line that states you must clean the compounding area, then your other evidence, you must cross-link to evidence where you have cleaned the compounding area. So we need to see how you have applied that SOP. If you do 4.1, then at least the leave plan, the rotation roster, performance assessment, HR policy, self-assessment. It must show how you have your personal development that you have gone through. Again, 5.3 is the compulsory one. So you must include annotated extracts of the applicable acts or legislation or code of conduct. As Mrs. Nadia said, don't include the whole Pharmacy Act and the whole Medicines and Related Substances Act. You won't have enough space to upload all of that. So only the relevant and applicable extracts for your case or your scenario. Keeping abreast, it means to use current and recently amended legislation. And remember to also add your annotated professional indemnity certificate. I think it is behavioral statement D ask that is revolve around professional indemnity, that you apply to professional indemnity guidelines, or I can't remember the exact wording now. An application form for professional indemnity is not, then you don't apply to the guidelines or then you still don't have that indemnity insurance, so you are not compliant then. So don't say I have applied, here's my application form, so that is my evidence for D. I will tell you that is not evidence for D. You still don't have indemnity insurance, then your evidence is not valid. So make sure about that. Domain 6, we said we recommend that you do 6.2, which is provision of training and education. Here you need to include evidence that training is part of an agreed plan, an agreed training plan, and you also need to clarify the role of the more experienced colleague that have helped you with this training and education. If you are an academic intern and you select 6.3, then you need to show how the training is part of a formal undergraduate module for pharmacy students and what your role was within that training that was given. If you're just a demi in a laboratory where you just walk between the students and just make sure that they don't play with the chemicals and you don't have an active part of the practical that you present, then it will not be sufficient. So you must be part of formal training of students. 6.6, the research competency standard. You must submit a complete research project, including the results. There's two behavioral statements. The one is the behavioral statement A is about the components of a proposal. So you need to have the complete proposal there, and extra evidence on what is the parts or the components of a proposal and how your proposal looks. So you need to do that cross-reference then. and then also how it was, the evidence that it was approved. And then B is you must actually conduct the research. So then you must show us the results of that approved proposal or that approved project that you had, how you have conducted that research. So then the role of the tutor, remember that you need to be a role model for your intern, and it implies that you have an obligation to be competent and practice professional yourself. And you also need to be a mentor to your intern. It is an opportunity for self-development through training, and you can also use this for your own CPD entries. Just important again, as a tutor, you also need to do your annual declaration and complete the 6 CPD activities. If you do not that, then you cannot be a tutor and you will not be compliant with council's regulations. So we have talked about a bit about tutor verification. It's one of the steps in the stepwise submission of your CPD. It's important for the tutors that you evaluate the entire CPD entry and make sure that all elements of authentication are present. And very important, when the intern completes the entry, you as the tutor must verify it online. I have heard stories. I'm going to say this. I myself, I'm a tutor. Council know about it, and I don't moderate my own interns' work. That's conflict of interest. So it is important that you go through every step of that online verification. Don't just click next. I have helped other interns, and I've heard very bad stories of tutors that ask the assistant, the pharmacist assistant, they have the tutor's login details and they can just go through everything and just accept. I've also moderated entries where I thought, how can a tutor accept that an intern submit this? I don't want my name to be linked to that if I was the tutor. So really make effort with the intern's entry and read through what they have written. Check the evidence. If you accept it, it will be released to council and then it will be sent for assessment. Or make suggestions to the intern on how to improve it. Then verify, and then it will be released to council. And you should also assist the intern with the comments made by the assessor after assessment. The tip, what I usually ask my interns to do, because I'm in an academic institution, I ask the interns to bring me the whole complete CPD entry as I would submit it, or email me before they submit it, and go then through everything. And then send it back before they submit, and you have to verify and then send it back, and then they submit, and then you have to verify, and just to make the process easier. Rather take that 10 or 20 or 30 minutes, sit with the intern and go through everything and make sure that you understand what the intern wanted to do there. And if the intern then submit for verification, then it is a much easier and quicker process to do. As a tutor, you have the responsibility to familiarize yourself with all the internship requirements and to complete the reports timeously. The tutor also play a vital role, as no intern is likely to succeed if the tutor is not competent, doesn't give guidance, there's no interaction with the tutor should be empathetic and supportive. But remember, the ultimate responsibility for the completion of the internship and the requirements thereof lie with the intern. The tutor is there to support, to guide, but it is not the tutor's responsibility that the intern complete his or her internship. But if your guidance is good and you have interaction with your intern, then that won't be a problem. It's important to grow with the intern and to enjoy the journey with the intern. Domain 6, it includes education, so you can use this opportunity of growing with your intern as a CPD yourself, as one of your own CPDs. And then finally, to end off, learning this year, make your CPDs and take it as an opportunity to learn, experience new things, to develop. I know if you are fourth year, I was also a fourth year a long time ago, then you feel that you know everything. But that's not true. You have to become a true lifelong learner, and then you will be successful. So make it an opportunity and a year to learn and to develop and to experience new things. There's an online attendance register and survey that we would like you to please complete for us. I think Natalie can just post that in the comment section as well. Then you can just complete it there. And then it's the end of our long session, and there's now time for questions. Just the contact details of council. As I've said, this presentation will also be available online. So please, if you feel that you have missed something or it was too much information on a Wednesday evening, look again at the presentation. There's also a voiceover where you can also listen again. So yes, that is all from my side. I just want to stop sharing my screen now. Then we can move on to the question and answer sessions.
Thanks so much. Our first question is quite a complicated one. There's several parts to it. Hi, ma'am. I just started my internship on the 1st of March, so I have a lot of questions. 1, regarding my application history as an intern, it says process application mail. Do you know what this means? Do I have to do anything, or is it SAPC action? 2, do we book for practice exams? 3, since I started on the 1st of March, do I qualify to write the exam in August? 4, where do we get the dates for submission of progress reports since I started in March? And 5, do all CPDs need to be submitted before the practice exam?
Tabang, I think you should answer.
Okay, thank you. The first one, Natalie, maybe the intern should submit a query with a screenshot of what she's talking about so that we can be able to see, and if it needs us to escalate it to IT, we can do so. And then the second one about the practice exams. Okay, both exams interns are expected to book. The booking is done online. So usually I think when it's time for bookings, when the bookings open, they will be notified to do so. And then with regard to submission of progress reports, the progress reports are submitted during particular weeks of internship. It will tell you whether it's a 12, you must submit 12 weeks after you have started your internship, whether it's 24 weeks and so forth. So there are no specific dates. So the interns are having a responsibility of tracking those weeks so that they can submit on time. And then I think in my presentation, I indicated that interns can be able to sit for the exam only when they are at least in their 6th month of internship. So someone who started in March, so you can count. If by August you are in your 6th month of internship, you will be able to write. Otherwise, you'll have to contact to send a query to the pre-reg exam unit. They will also help you if you are unable to check it yourself. I think I've answered all the questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabang. I would like to know, how long must the evidence be when writing a CPD?
Okay, I'll answer that one. I think I have already answered. There's no clear answer to that one. As long as your evidence is sufficient to cover 75% of the behavioral statements, if there's 4 or more, 1, 2, or 3 behavioral statements, you need to provide sufficient evidence for all of them. If you refer to the text, then I think it's 1,000 characters per step. So if you need to type your learning need, you have 1,000 characters. Planning 1,000 characters. Implementation, if I remember correctly, it's also 1,000, and as well as the evaluation. But for evidence, you can't submit documents larger than. No, I can't remember how many megabytes, but I know there's a limit. Maybe Mrs. Nordia can answer that part.
Marianda, yes, I think there's a limit, but it's big. And with regard to the evidence, it's difficult to say, as Dr. Hubert said, it should prove that you are able to do an activity, that you learned a new skill. If you provide sufficient evidence to show that you learned a new skill, then that is sufficient.
Okay. Natalie, just to add on what the 2 colleagues have said, the interns are expected to submit evidence that is current, which means it should have been taken during the year of internship. Somebody who has started an internship in January cannot submit evidence. I mean, January 2023 cannot submit evidence for 2022, because that one, the person was not yet registered as an intern, and since it was in the previous year, it is being considered as outdated. But if somebody has started her internship in November and collected her evidence during the month of December and submit in January, that will be acceptable. So the year of registration as an intern is what is used to measure whether the evidence is current or outdated. Thank you.
As an academic intern, I just wanted to confirm, for the progress reports, they only need to be submitted by the tutor and not by the supervising pharmacist where we do our 400 hours.
Yes, only the tutor have access to the progress, to submitting the progress report. It's not available to another pharmacist, although the supervising pharmacist can declare the 400 hours. The supervising pharmacist cannot do the progress report. That must be done by the tutor.
Okay, the next one is a statement which you can respond to. Most of the slides apply to internships in normal internships. Academic interns have a different schedule, and this is not addressed in your slides.
Natalie, I think I'll take that one. An academic internship adheres to the normal requirements of a normal internship. The only difference is they have to work the 400 hours, which was addressed, and they have to hand in their master's degree. They have to achieve their master's degree. They adhere to the same guidelines for CPDs. The the deadlines are, or the submission dates are provided in the manual. So that's exactly the same for all interns. And they write the same exam. So that's also the same for all interns. They have to be registered for more than 6 months to write the exam. They have to submit their CPDs. The only difference is they have to work 400 hours and they have to submit their proof that they have attained their master's degree. So that's the only difference. And I think that was addressed, it is addressed in the manual and on Tabang's slides. So I don't know if the intern has any other questions, they maybe can just ask us, but all the requirements are exactly the same for all interns.
Great, thank you. To be able to write the pre-registration exam, do we have to pass all 6 CPDs or only 3? Then are we allowed to submit more than 6 CPDs to ensure that we pass 6?
Okay, Tabang, I think you should answer this one.
Okay, like I said, interns who are on their 6 month of internship, they are expected to have submitted 6 CPDs and have passed at least 3 CPDs. So it depends on how long have you been registered as an intern. And then I think there was a second part to that question, Natalie.
Are we allowed to submit more than 6 CPDs to ensure that we pass 6?
No, interns are allowed to submit 6 CPDs and to resubmit those that they were not found successful in. And then in case you are to submit a different CPD, it will be upon the recommendation from the assessor. Let's say you have submitted CPD from domain 1 and you worked on competency standard 1.1 for argument's sake, and when the assessor is going through your entry, realize that what you have provided is addressing competency standard 1.2, then the assessor will tell you to, or will make a recommendation to say change to competency standard 1.2 since you have provided what is required in there. So yeah, that's the only time where the intern can change the entry. Thank you.
I just want to add there as well. If you submit, so for example, competency standard 1.1 and 1.5, then we will say it's a duplication from domain 1. So even then, if you have submitted then, for argument's sake, 6 CPDs or 6 entries, you will not be successful, you will not meet the requirements because you need to submit at least 1 of each domain. So for pharmacists, it's different. Pharmacists can submit all of their CPDs for the same competency standard, but interns need to submit 1 in each domain. So if you select more than 1 from a domain, it will be a duplication, and it will not be assessed, the second one.
Okay, as an academic intern who is an international student, what are the chances of me being placed for community service?
Okay, let me take it. For international students, there are criteria that they need to satisfy in order to be registered in our country. So that is done through the pre-registration unit. So I will advise the intern to send the query to pre-registration, and then they will advise her of the requirements. And then if those requirements are met, then the intern will be able to apply for for community service, which is done through the Department of Health via ICSP program. Thank you.
Is there a limit to the amount of characters or words we should write for each of the sections, i.e. reflection, planning, implementation, and evaluation?
Yes, as Dr. Hubert mentioned, there's 1,000 characters that may be used for the sections.
Regarding domain 1, does my tutor need to be present during the presentation for public health?
If your tutor is going to provide a statement that said that they verified that you have done the presentation and that you have, make a declaration, then they need to witness that. As long as it is, they don't need to be there. But whoever is, if you want to have someone write you a confirmation letter as evidence, then that person at least need to be there to witness the whole presentation. But I know some of the interns give talks at primary schools or at old age homes, and then the tutor is not necessarily there. Usually they will go with, but whoever is going to make the declaration needs to be there, although you also need to act under the direct supervision of a pharmacist. Yes, Mrs. Nadia, I think you can also just add here something. I don't want to give incorrect information here.
No, I agree. A lot of interns, there's, depending on the hospital, there's a lot of nurses or other healthcare professionals that's part of the healthcare team doing the presentation or the health campaign. So anybody that was there, that witnessed your presentation or your health campaign can verify. And if the person that is verifying is your tutor, but I'm not talking about verification online of your submission, somebody verifying that you actually did the campaign, then that should be your tutor, but it not necessarily needs to be your tutor.
Do all CPDs need to be submitted before the practice exam?
Okay, thank you, Natalie. For practice exam, there are no requirements in relation to CPDs. So whether you have submitted or not, if you book, you'll be allowed to sit for the practice exam. But for the pre-reg exam, that's where the CPDs will be considered as minimum requirements. Thank you.
Do the characters include spaces or without spaces for the CPD submission? And is it wise to submit all 6 CPDs at once?
The characters include spaces, yes, because it's a character, not a, the characters include the spaces. And as Mrs. Nadia said, it is not wise to submit all 6 CPDs at once. It's better to submit 1 or 2. Just first to see if you're on the right track and if you are doing it correctly. I mean, you can work on all of them and just submit 1 or 2 or 3 just to make sure, because remember, you can only submit 9 for free. So if you submit all 6 and you have made a mistake and you are not successful in any one of them, then you are going to pay a resubmission or a reassessment fee for 3 of them. So it's better to submit 2 or 3. If you are successful and you go through the comments and you see where you can improve, or if you don't need to improve the way you address, so for example, the learning need or the planning, or etc., then you can submit the rest. If you see that your evaluation you do wrong, you forget to say, you provide examples of application, or your planning, you have no resources listed, or your evidence, you have breached patient confidentiality and it's not sufficient and it's not valid, then you can change that and make sure that the rest of your entries is correct. So don't submit all 6 at once. It's not a good idea.
Is there a specific due date for academic interns regarding the submission of progress reports like the normal pharmacy interns? The manual does not specify a specific date.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. The manual does not provide dates for submission of progress reports. Like I said, it's the responsibility of the intern to count the number of weeks. In my presentation, I think I indicated the number of weeks, let me see, on which the interns are expected to submit. I just want to check, like, the academic interns, I said they need to submit 3 progress reports, and I think the intern, they just have to check in the manual. They will get the guidance there. Yeah, thank you.
Tabang, I would just like to add to that, because academic interns usually take 2 years, so they don't fall within the 365 days because the master's degree usually takes a little bit longer. And it also depends on when they work their 400 hours, because if they haven't worked the 400 hours, it's difficult to complete the sectoral progress report. So academic interns have a little bit more, I won't say, the timeline is a little bit different, but it depends on the intern when they work their 400 hours, when they submit their CPDs, and when we can complete the progress reports. But everything has to be completed within the 2 years it takes to do the master's degree. So it is not specific, and it depends on the specific intern's timeline and when they work the 400 hours, when we can submit the reports.
What will be regarded as plagiarism in CPDs? It is seen in the slides that certain domains and behavioral slides will require specific evidence. Thus, most people will submit the same evidence, i.e. manufacturing sheets, etc. To what extent will plagiarism be noticed or detected?
Okay, thanks, Natalie. Council is in the process to get a program that will test for plagiarism, and that will be more focused on the text in the implementation, the evaluation, the learning title, and the learning need. The example that I referred to, the learning need and the learning title was word for word the same. The planning was exactly the same resources that will be used. It was written in the same way. The implementation was the same. The evidence was just the one intern, both of them had photos of presenting or providing the training and education. So the one was the photo of one intern providing the training and education, and then the other intern, he was in the photo providing the training and education, but the attendance registers were the same. There's certain things that, I mean, GPP will be the same. So that is not regarded as plagiarism if you and a fellow student or fellow intern use the same part of the GPP. But if you use the same activity, for example, providing training and education on cold chain management, and you work in the same hospital and you use the same presentation, providing the education to the same group of people, then obviously it's plagiarism. So we look at the text that is used when you write the different steps. But for evidence, yes, some pieces of evidence. I mean, if you and me both do 3.4 and we are in different settings, most probably we will use the same section 33 from the Act. And that's not plagiarism, that's fine. But if we use the same prescription from the same doctor for the same patient in the same pharmacy, then it becomes a question of plagiarism. I hope it answered the question there.
And to add on what Rianda has said, even using the CPDs from the previous years, because we have had a number of cases where interns use the exact CPDs that were submitted before by the interns in the previous years. So that is also considered as plagiarism. Thank you.
We have a question from YouTube. With regards to taking an attendance register, do you have to cover the participants' names?
If it is patients, yes. If it is healthcare professionals or colleagues, then no. But if it's anybody else, school children, patients in a clinic, people waiting in line at the clinic, then yes, you need to cover their names. Yes, thank you.
Should I have access to a computer in a community pharmacy? I also want to know about access to Microsoft Business to help support my documents.
I'm not sure with regards to what the question is, but if you think in the sense of making notes or talking to a patient, then it's not necessary to type it. I mean, if you have a consultation with a patient or a pharmacist-initiated therapy, that encounter with a patient, you can make notes. Don't type out a conversation between you and a patient. Rather, write down on a piece of paper, the patient is hypertensive, it's a male, he's 20 years old, he smokes a packet of cigarettes a day, he drinks 3 beers, he complains about coughing and blocked nose, and let the patient sign. But remember, you need to ask permission from the patient to use it as a CPD. You're not going to, you're going to maintain patient confidentiality. But I don't know if this is what was meant with the question, if you need access to a computer. But you know, or if you mean something else with the question, I'm not quite sure. I understand, but if it is got to do with evidence and making notes, I would say it's not necessary. You can do it on paper as well. Maybe the intern can reply to that to that question just to make it more clear. Thanks, Natalie.
Thanks. They can also pop us an email or contact us on social media to expound on their question, and we'll assist them further. A final question for the evening. Are post-basic assistants allowed to give me instructions? I feel as though I am an assistant's assistant the whole time and I'm not learning anything.
It's a very difficult question. It depends on the environment where you are working, what the responsibilities of that post-basic assistant is, if they are acting within the scope of practice or not. Most probably, I think if it's a post-basic assistant with a lot of experience, then you can learn from that person. I mean, I'm a pharmacist for a lot of years, and if I locum, I still learn a lot from pharmacist assistants. So they can give you instructions as long as it is within your scope of practice and their scope of practice, and as long as the tutor is aware of that. See it as an opportunity to learn from the assistant, we are not here to fight them, and we are here to work with them and to learn from them, as well as they must learn from us. So I don't know if that answers the question at all. I don't know if the Bang wants to add something to that. I don't know if Mrs. Nadia wants to add. I don't see her with us. I don't know if she's got connectivity issues or something. Maybe Tabang can add to my.
I think you answered the question well, Rianda. Because like you said, we're learning from each other. You coming with theory, someone has a experience, practical experience. You can complement each other. But I'm not sure whether when the intern is saying they are giving them what instructions or so, in that case, maybe they also need to consult with their tutors. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if there's any more questions.
No further questions.
Okay. In the absence of any other question, let me take this opportunity to thank colleague. Yes, Mr. Ntatemashish.
It appears there's a final question in the chat.
Okay.
Apologies. If I work in industry, is it okay for me to complete all 6 CPDs within the manufacturing pharmacy, or do I have to complete some from my time during my 400 hours at a pharmacy?
If it is possible to complete all 6 at the institution where you are working, then you can do it. But otherwise, if you do your 400 hours, you can do some of them there as well. So it will depend on the learning need and the cases themselves, where they fit in. Yes.
Okay, are we done with the questions, Natalie?
Tsabang, there's another comment here. I don't have any space in the dispensary to be able to do my CPDs.
Okay. I think that one can be addressed with the tutor. I don't even understand when the intern is saying doesn't have space in the dispensary. But I think the tutor is the relevant person to engage with, and I hope they will make the environment conducive for the intern to be able to collect whatever evidence is needed for them to complete their CPDs. Thank you. Was that the last one, Natalie?
Yes, there's one last one, Tsabang. Hello, can I write the practice exam on the 1st of June 2023, even though I started my intern in February 2023?
Yes, remember I said there are no minimum requirements for one to sit for the practice exams, as long as you are registered as an intern. Thank you.
Thanks, Tsabang. That was the final question.
Okay, thank you so much, Natalie. Let me take this opportunity to thank all the interns and interns and tutors for making time to come and attend this workshop. We believe they have gained all the information they need to start completing CPD entries. And I also want to thank the representatives of assessors and moderators for making time to take our interns through on how to submit CPD entries. And I also want to thank colleagues from the office, the ComMedia team, and also other colleagues from Professional Affairs. Thank you so much for being there and to assist us to make this workshop being a success. And with those few words, I would like to encourage interns to start submitting now and not to wait for the last minute, since there can be some disappointments. And it has been done with others. I hope you have seen the statistics, and those who made time to do what was required of them, they managed to get it right. Some struggled because they delayed and they did all other things that may end up making it difficult for them to make it on time. So please make sure that you decide well, you plan your things on time so that you don't get disappointed. And I would like to wish you all the best with your internship year. And I hope you will be free to contact the office in case of any other query. So with those few words, I want to wish you a good evening. Thank you.
Thanks, Tabang and Natalie and Adele, and to the interns. Goodbye. I hope you have a nice evening.
Good night, all.